You're going to be hearing people on sports radio talking about man bod. And it's not just going to be me. And you're perhaps going to think to yourself, oh, this is something I don't want to hear about. I don't want to objectify men. Doesn't matter. It's time. It's time for us to determine whether or not someone can succeed in the National Football League entirely based off of their height, their weight, their hand size, how fast they can run 40 yards in a straight line after getting in a strange sprinters-like stance. How many bench press reps can they do in a row? Because you do that all the time in the middle of a football field. 50-yard line. You're running for a touchdown. You got to stop at the 50 and do 20 bench press reps of 225 each. I'm not a fan of this time of year, as you could probably tell. But we did have an interesting development as we get to the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Bryce Young might be shorter than we thought. This was Todd McShay talking about Bryce Young on ESPN, a transcript. I love Bryce Young. I really do. I know he's 195 pounds. A really good friend of mine who's a scout had him at 5'10 and a half. McShay continues to compliment Bryce Young, but also said that if he were a general manager, he would be scared of drafting him. 5'10 and a half. McShay went a little bit further because this is such a strange time of year. As we get to the NFL Combine, you're going to see a lot of prospects check in that probably weigh a little bit differently than they typically weigh over the course of a season because you're trying to drive that stock up, sort of like a weigh-in for a boxing match. Bryce Young has a plan to get up to another weight that he is not at right now, per McShay.
I said he's working on it, I sat down and talked to him, and, like the trainers and like the nutrition that he's working on. He wants to get up to 210 to have that frame that's going to hold up. And don't forget this: he took a punishment in the SEC. If you really go back and study his tape, there's no quarterback in the country, in my opinion, that took a bigger punishment than he did.
Well, you like hearing that he took a punishment, but he's also got to get bigger. There's a lot of, even if he was tough enough to sustain that at the SEC level, you got to wonder about a quarterback's ability to do that for a 17-game regular season, especially having watched this past year where Tua Tagovailoa is getting thrown around like a rag doll. He's looking like if you've ever played the video game Halo and, a grenade goes off and a dude just goes flying. Like, that's kind of what Tua Tagovailoa looks like when he gets hit from time to time. So, look, I know that there are the people that actually do this for a living, the actual scouting itself. But once again, maybe it's just time for a refresher in history. All you have to go off is history, and history generally is something that predicts the future, right? And history should make you pause when it comes to your faith in Bryce Young. And here's why. Historically, it's been rare for a short, and we'll say less than 6'1" in terms of height quarterback to succeed in the NFL. And there are exceptions. And maybe 10 years from now, we're talking about an entirely different narrative when it comes to quarterback height. They've been getting a lot more opportunities over the last couple of years, those little fellas. But for the most part, the exceptions that we have seen have had a lot of help, whether it's because they were a ridiculous freak athlete or it's because they were in a better situation. So conventional wisdom tells you that the best shorter quarterback of all time is Drew Brees, who is about 6 feet tall. But we do seem to forget that from 2001 through 2005, he didn't play for the Saints. He played for the San Diego Chargers, who drafted his replacement in 2004. Now, he goes to New Orleans. He's working with Sean Payton. He's in a dome. A lot of things were in his favor there to eventually see him, if we define success by winning a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl there. A defense that also had a ridiculous streak of takeaways that year. But hey, I'm not trying to take away from Drew Brees here. I'm just saying, when he went to New Orleans, he was a part of a team that was really bleeping good. Russell Wilson, another pretty damn successful shorter quarterback, 5'11". He comes into the league, a third-round pick. He supplants Matt Flynn in Seattle. But he had the Legion of Boom defense on the other side, which came into its own in 2012, his first year as a starter. It also had Marshawn Lynch and a pretty powerful running game to help complement the way that he played. He had a lot of help. A recent example, Jalen Hurts is only 6'1". You wouldn't think that, but he is. And Jalen Hurts this past season, I think, proved to a lot of people that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the game. But it did take him some time to get to this point, and it certainly helped that Philadelphia put together an incredible roster around him, not just with the wide receivers and the offensive line that Philadelphia has on that side of the ball, but defensively, at least up until the Super Bowl, this was thought to be one of the best defenses in the league. Take a look at the sack numbers that they had this past year. Other shorter quarterbacks who have succeeded in the NFL. Michael Vick, maybe this is the exception, but he helped himself. Freak athlete. Have we seen a quarterback as fast as Michael Vick? Maybe Lamar Jackson. Throwing power that Vick had. Vick did single-handedly win some games for the Atlanta Falcons back in the day. He was that special. What would his career have been like had the dogfighting incident not taken place? Who knows? I think if you watch that documentary, there were some signs that maybe Vick didn't work the hardest, didn't take his craft as seriously as maybe he should have. But let's move on. Some other shorter quarterbacks. We've seen splash plays from Kyler Murray. That supporting cast in Arizona hasn't been bad. This year it was a disaster, but he's been successful, I think. Baker Mayfield with the Cleveland Browns. That team had talent. They did make the playoffs. Then all of a sudden, it just stopped. Was that because of injuries? Was that because of the coaching staff? It didn't work out for Baker Mayfield, though. This is a guy who had won the Heisman, much like Kyler Murray. Tua Tagovailoa. We had questions about him until this year when you started to see what he was capable of with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Mike McDaniel. Then he got hit a couple of times, and you got a frame like that. Maybe it's more easy for you to take hits like that. At the very least with Jalen Hurts, who's like around 6'1", dude is loaded in terms of his weight, in terms of his muscles. Other quarterbacks, less than 6'1". And this is where we get into the journeyman phase. Case Keenum. He was a starter for a bit, but also a guy that was at the back of a draft. And maybe this goes to where a lot of people across the league didn't want to give shorter quarterbacks opportunities, keeping them down. You had Doug Flutie, who had won a Heisman. Took him a really long time just to get a real chance as a starting quarterback in the league. I know the Bears drafted him. I think he was with the Patriots for a bit. I think New Jersey Generals in the USFL, goes to Canada with the Toronto Argonauts, and finally comes back. And I mean, he really first got his opportunity as a true starter for 2 seasons in like 1998 and 1999 with the Buffalo Bills. Ty Detmer, he had a year in 1995, won a Heisman too at BYU with the Philadelphia Eagles, but I mean, for the most part, a journeyman. Chase Daniel, Colt McCoy, Tyrod Taylor. And then you got Johnny Manziel, who was just a dummy. For the most part, shorter quarterbacks have required a lot of help around them. Bryce Young is a shorter quarterback. Bryce Young is a smaller quarterback, too, in terms of his overall weight. Do you feel like the Texans are a place for him to succeed? And this is not me saying Bryce Young can't succeed in the league. I'm just saying that Bryce Young probably needs to be on a team that has the ability to add a lot quickly. I guess the Texans do. They got cap space. They could draft well. But my big reservation with Bryce Young is his height. It should be yours as well, because historically, unless that person has a lot of help around him, it doesn't work out.